Hello, Sir Alvin. Hello?
Good evening po.
Hello, sir. Hello, good evening. Malinaw ba yung boses ko?
Opo, so far po.
Alright. Pero hindi ko nakikita eh. Naka-open yung camera ko, ba't di ko nakikita? Kasi naka-project.
Opo, naka-project po kasi yung screen natin.
Alright, okay. So, who will go first? Ikaw, ako? How would you do this?
Ay, kayo po, since naka-ano lang po kami, naka-support lang po kami sa entire program. Sa kayo po yung main host po.
Alright, sige. Pero na-receive mo na yung PowerPoint, no?
Opo, nasa akin na po.
Sige.
Ipo-project ko po once na sabihin niyo po yung safe spaces.
Alright. Thank you.
You're welcome po.
Okay. Hello, good evening, everyone. Um, uh, we'll start in 4 minutes. Okay. So we'll start at exactly 4 minutes, 3 minutes and counting. So, just a few reminders, important reminders, some basic etiquette. Uh, Kindly mute your microphone while the whole presentation is ongoing, and you may share your thoughts and insights later on during the open forum. Okay, thank you. All right, at this point, we still have to wait for the other participants to enter the session and the other two speakers. Thank you. Good evening once again. In 2 minutes, we'll start the session. Time check, it's 6:04. All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the fifth working progress for this semester. Wan Shanghao, Father Do. Good evening, Father. This will be the last group, I suppose, for this semester. Those who would be presenting their thought pieces. All right. Just a few important reminders again before we begin the session. Kindly mute your microphone the whole session while they are trying to present their work. And you may share your thoughts and insights later on during the open forum. All right. So it's already 6:05. So let me read to you the policies on safe space. As defined, the safe space is a place or environment in which a person or category of people can feel confident that they will not be exposed to discrimination, criticism, harassment, or any other emotional or physical harm. The Department of Philosophy commits itself in providing safe spaces for its faculty members, students, and guests. As such, the following policies are put in place. 1. Commitment to recognize the individual gender preferences of its members. The said gender preference must not be used against any individual. His or her ideas and judgments must be taken without bias. 2. Commitment to speak with prudence. Members of the department are expected to act with prudence, thereby avoiding actions that may lead other members to feel uncomfortable. In accordance with the Safe Spaces Act, sexist, homophobic, and transphobic statements and slurs, the persistent telling of sexual jokes, the use of sexual names, unwanted sexual misogynistic, transphobic, homophobic, and sexist remarks and comments online must not be tolerated. 3. Commitment to act according to stature. As faculty members and students and learned individuals, we are expected to act according to our stature. Actions that may lead to committing any form of harassment shall warrant necessary sanctions as stated by the law and the university policies. As stated in the Safe Spaces Act, relentless request for one's personal dealings, unwanted comments to appearance, cursing, terrorizing, and intimidating victims through physical, psychological, and emotional threats, cyberstalking, invasion of the victim's privacy, and attempt to silence the victim are examples of violations punishable under the law. Teachers and students are expected to act in accordance with Republic Act 11313 or the Safe Space Act, an act defining gender-based sexual harassment in streets, public spaces, workplaces, and educational or training institution. Members of the department are reminded at all times that any violation of the aforementioned provisions is punishable under the law and existing university policies and rules and regulation. All right. Are we all here? Are the three speakers are already present? Yes. All right. Okay. All right. Oh, Okay, Father Do, are you prepared? Can we now?
Yes, yes,
all right,
po.
all right. Oh, yes. Okay, good.
Yeah,
Great.
yeah.
All right. So without further ado, let me read the title of Father Maido's paper,
Yes,
which
yes, po.
titled A Philosophical Interpretation on Confucian Filial Piety and its Compatibility with Catholic Faith in Vietnam. My fellow colleagues, let us all welcome Father Maido.
Thank you, Sir Alvin. Sir, can I share my screen?
Yes, Father.
Okay. How can I check my screen? Because I don't see it. Share.
There should be a share screen button at the bottom of your screen.
Father, there's a screen button if you
The green
below
one,
your
Father.
screen. Yeah, yeah,
Green one.
the green one. It's
With the
just it
arrow,
says there share content.
screen.
Share
Yes,
content.
po.
All right.
Click it, Father.
Okay. I saw it, po. Thank you. You can see it.
Yes, Father.
Yeah,
Yes,
po.
Father.
Yeah. Once again, thank you, Sir Alvin. Alvin Tan for introducing me to the staffs. Good evening, Bulldogs, and my friends and everyone in this meeting. Tonight, I want to. I'm Father Maidu, and I'm from Vietnam. So my working title for my thesis is a philosophical interpretation on Confucian filial piety. In Chinese, we pronounce it Xiao, and its compatibility with Catholic faith in Vietnam. So this is my abstract. The aim of this thesis is to conduct an examination on the Confucian concept of Xiao, which translates to filial piety or filiality in Confucian classes, in order to present the most coherent conception that the text will allow, and discuss the compatibility between Confucian filial piety and Catholic faith in Vietnam. It's essential that through this research, the concept of Xiao be understood and analyzed within the conceptual framework of Confucian thought. It would not be an exaggeration to say that the idea of Xiao pervades all aspects of the Chinese culture, both in the past and the present. As Confucianism was introduced into Vietnam, the concept of Xiao became one of the most important characteristics of traditional Vietnamese society. Filial piety was considered the foundational virtue in maintaining harmony within the society. Furthermore, filial piety is seen as an essential element with which Catholicism must measure against, and its compatibility with this traditional norm will determine its success or failure within a Confucian society. By examining the Confucian concept of filial piety and its compatibility with Christian faith in Vietnam, this thesis seeks not only to understand the past discourse between these traditions, but also reintroduce the discussion between the two religious practices today in order to contribute to the process of enculturation in Vietnam. So now this is my background of the study. India Confucianism and Catholicism, reinvigorating the dialogue. Michael Slater, Erin Klein, and Philip Ivanhoe determined that Confucianism and Catholicism are two of the most ancient and influential religious traditions in this whole world. And indeed, Confucianism was developed by Confucius. Latinized from Chinese Gongju or Confucian, Master Gong, one of the most significant Chinese philosophers. Confucianism is often seen as both a religion and a philosophy. It would not be an exaggeration to say that it became a prominent unifying force of the Chinese culture. Its influence even spread to Korea, Japan, and Vietnam. Meanwhile, Catholicism traces its history back to the time of Jesus of Nazareth, an itinerant preacher in the area around the provinces of Palestine. During the period of Roman occupation in the early 30s of the Common Era, Catholicism began with a relatively small group of closely related ethnic people. It has in the modern times become a global community, and with one notable exception, it has transcended its beginning to become an international multi-ethnic community. In the relationship between these two religious traditions, many people assume that they are mutually opposing and exclusive. However, many scholars claim that they have a long-term and complex interrelation and deeply share beliefs, orientations, styles, and affinities. These two different approaches can be seen in what is called Chinese rice controversy. It was a major dispute among Roman Catholic missionaries, including Dominicans, Franciscans, and Jesuits, over the religiosity of Confucianism and Chinese rituals during the 17th and 18th centuries. The dispute concerned with whether the Chinese ritual practices of honoring family ancestors and other formal Confucian and Chinese imperial rites qualify as religious rites or whether they are incompatible with Catholic beliefs. On the contrary, the Jesuits argued that these Chinese rites were secular rituals that were compatible with Christianity within certain limits and should thus be tolerated. The Dominicans and Franciscans, however, disagree and take this issue to Rome. The Chinese rice controversy could be one of the many disputes between the Jesuits and the Dominicans in China and elsewhere in Asia, including Japan, India, and Vietnam. When Catholicism was first introduced into Vietnam in 1553 CE, Catholic missionaries found out that Vietnam had already been profoundly influenced by Confucian values. Although Confucianism was adopted by the Vietnamese ruling class, most Vietnamese commoners knew only the Confucian ideals of the three points uh, in Vietnamese, Tam Cương for men, the three obedience. These Confucian ethics are seen as essential of thought or religion must forms will determine its success. Of Catholic missionaries found themselves at odds on exclusive devotion to a single deity, rejection of polygamy, prohibition of participation in local religious festivals, and restrictions on the cult of ancestor worship were interpreted by its opponents as a rejection of traditional ways and a promotion of foreign ways. To many observers, the way of filial devotion, or in Vietnamese, Đạo hiếu, was a characteristic of Vietnamese religious and ethical duty. Filiality or filial devotion was considered the foundational virtue in maintaining harmony within a society. If a person maintains filiality, that person could be expected to be respectful and loyal. No one from the king to his lowliest subject wanted to be outsiders, did not see Catholic converts display filial duty in traditional ways, especially with regard to rituals for the dead. They assume that the converts have abandoned the tradition. Again, this context, a number of apologetic works appear in the 18th and 19th centuries to persuade new Catholic converts to convert confirmed that Catholics were not committing a sin against the state and or their parents and ancestors. The Jesuit missionary Alessandro de Ros borrowed, modified, and applied the doctrine of the three fathers, which was initially presented by Matteo Ricci to his 1651 Catechism. Phép giảng 8 ngày is translated into English. Catholic Catechism divided into 8 days. In his Catechism, de Ros made a distinction between three degrees of honor due to three grades of fathers. The lowest grade is composed of the father and mother who give birth to our bodies. The middle grade is the king who governs our country. Lastly, the highest grade is the Lord of heaven and earth, the true Lord above all things. He went on to describe the duties one owes to its degree of fatherhood and the reason for carrying out these duties. As a result, the doctrine of three fatherhoods, which was written in Matteo Ricci's The Anju Sigi, the true meaning of the Lord of Heaven, and Alessandro's Catechism divided into 8 days, was a Catholic answer to the allegations that Christians abandoned their monarch and their parents when they converted to the religion of the Westerners. In addition, it demonstrates that Catholic doctrines could be adapted to the existing worldview and ideology so that a process of enculturation of the Christian faith could be possible. The doctrine of three fatherhoods composed and defended by earthly missionaries in Vietnam lay a solid foundation for later missionaries and even Vietnamese Catholic Church to engage in a dialogue with the Vietnamese traditional culture imbued with Confucian moral virtues. Thereafter, this thesis serves as a continuation of the existing dialogue between Catholic belief and Vietnamese traditional culture. Realizing that filial piety is the starting point for the dialogue, the thesis will focus on the concept of filial piety that originates from Confucian moral framework. The significance of this thesis is to provide an in-depth treatment of Confucian filial piety, and from thence, the thesis in turn answered two important questions. It is to say, to what extent has the Confucian filial piety influenced Vietnamese culture, and to what extent has the Confucian filial piety been compatible with Catholic belief? That is my background of the study, and it is design of the study. The proclam statement is the concept of enculturation, which is fully understood as a dynamic relationship between faith and culture governing Christian missionary outreach, has achieved popularity in the theological discussion for the last decades. In the contemporary Vietnamese Catholic Church, there is an urgent need for a better understanding of the relationship between Catholic faith and Vietnamese culture, into which has been assimilated by Confucian moral concept of filial piety for the past 1,000 years. More specifically, the following research questions need to be addressed. A. How is the concept of filial piety understood and analyzed within the conceptual framework of Confucian thought? B. How has Confucian filial piety influenced Vietnamese probably? Uh, and C. What are the relevant similarities between Confucian filial piety and Catholic faith? And here I will use some comparative points to make it. The first one is the concept of filial piety found in Confucian classics and Catholic Holy Bible. Honor your father and mother, filial piety and God. The ancestor worship in Confucianism and Catholicism, Confucian filial piety and Catholic loyalty, Confucian filial piety and Catholic virtue of obedience, and the objectives of their thesis. The long-term goal of the research is to present a detailed document on the process of enculturation in Vietnam. The objective of the current study is to enhance through understanding about the similarities between Catholic faith and Confucian filial piety. In particular, the study has the following sub-objectives. A, to describe adequately the concept of filial piety that is relevant to the Confucian moral outwork. B, to briefly provide a far-reaching effect of Confucian filial piety upon Vietnamese culture. To understanding correctly the reason why Vietnamese Catholic converts were accused of unfiliality, to examine the intellectual effort of Catholic missionaries to explicate the possible adoption of Catholic beliefs in a Confucian society in their apologetic works. Methodology. The primary research methodology for this study is literature review, conceptual research, and comparative method. This study will first review numerous Confucian texts, including the four books, that is the Dashi, the Lunji, the Songyang, the Mangju, as well as the Xiao and the Liji, in order to understand the widest possible range of meaning of Xiao. In the second stage of the study, a comprehensive review of past and existing references will be used to identify how Confucian filial piety has deeply influenced Vietnamese. Based on this understanding, the researcher will investigate the causes and effects of practical encounters between Vietnamese Confucian filial piety and Catholic faith. Finally, in the third stage of this study, a comparative method will be applied to outline possible theoretical similarities between Confucian filial piety and Catholic faith. And dear Doc and my friend, that is my presentation. Thank you for listening. And now is space and time for you to give me some feedbacks, important feedbacks, so that I can develop my thesis later. Thank you for that.
All right, Father Ado, thank you for your
Thank you
wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
Now we now open the floor for the open forum. You may either post your questions in the chat box, or you may raise your hand and directly address your questions to Father Ado. Anyone from the audience who would like to share their thoughts and comments? Anyone? Yes, wish to recognize Doc Pao. He's raising his hands. Yes, Doc Pao, you may.
Okay, thank you,
Okay.
Alvin. Hello, Father. How are you?
Doctor, I'm fine. Thanks for.
Yeah. Are you in Manila at the moment?
Yes, but I'm in Quiapo.
Oh, yeah. So anyway, thank you for sharing with us your thesis proposal. I believe this is the thesis project, the research project that you intend to pursue for your MA. I was wondering, because we had a conversation, I think a couple of months ago, regarding your advisor. I'm hoping that you were already able to convince someone to become your advisor.
Yes, but
Okay.
already. But
So say, yeah, that's good to know. Now, I don't really have a question. I just wanted the open forum to start. No, but here, I think I don't know. Hopefully, the others will agree with me that the way you presented your project is quite straightforward, and I think you're clear about what you want to do. You know? And it's also quite novel because it's not every day that we encounter someone who's doing philosophy, and would want to relate, for example, Confucianism with, or would like to talk about, how Confucianism evolved in your case, in your own country, right, Vietnam. So I find that quite novel. But I'd like, one of the things that I noticed towards the end of your presentation, when you presented your methodology, and it's still being being shown to us here, no? The primary research methodology for this study is literature review, conceptual research, and comparative method. I actually like the way you phrase it. But my only suggestion is, you might want to write research design instead of methodology. Meaning, you might want to identify the steps that you want to take in the chapters. While the way you presented it is fine, at least it's understandable to me, and it's quite clear. There are three things here that you want to do. You want to present a kind of perhaps critical review of the literature, and then conceptual research and comparative. But maybe it would be better if you're going to write a research design where you're going to present the logical flow or progression of your chapters. So instead of calling it methodology, you can call it research design, and you can start by saying, maybe you could start by reiterating the main focus of your study, and then you proceed to saying, in order to, by the way, can you repeat what's exactly the main thesis of your, if you can put it in one no, not paragraph, one sentence. What is it that you're doing in your thesis?
That is, in one sentence, that is the compatibility between Confucian Filial piety and Catholic faith in Vietnam. So, yeah,
all right. So there are two. That's quite interesting, no? Because I think you want to show that there are two, not contending, but two coexisting traditions in Vietnam, right? Catholicism, and then you have Confucianism. And it's very interesting, at least for me, it's very interesting to learn how those two contrasting cultures, religious cultures, coexist and interact within one culture. And that's the reason why I find your study novel. But if that is the case, then if that is the statement of the overarching thesis of your work, then you could state that at the beginning of your research design, and then you say, in order to tell a story, or to present a narrative of the, or in order to you can phrase it later on, no? In order to present a narrative of the compatibility of filial, the Confucian idea of filial piety and Christianity, I will take the following steps. And then second paragraph, in chapter 1, okay, this is what I'm going to do. You can say, in chapter 1, I'm going to present a critical review of existing literature. Okay. In chapter 2, I'm going to present, and then you have to show the logical connection between your first chapter and the second chapter. Okay. Then in chapter 2, uh, with you can say with the critical literature review presented in chapter 1, I'm able to present a conceptual study of, or conceptual analysis of, and then you can state the following maybe themes or ideas that you want to elaborate on. Okay, and in the third chapter, I'm going to present a comparative study or comparison of filial piety and based on the critical review presented in the first chapter and the conceptual analysis presented in the second chapter. That way, if I were the one reading your work, I'm already able to imagine the flow of your thesis, no, by just reading the research design. Okay, I'd rather have that instead of let's say formulating a methodology that presents itself as I call this yung the word escapes me for the moment. Yung a methodology that appears complex, no? For example, in this thesis is the constructive reading of, or a phenomenological reading of, or a hermeneutic reading of that sort of formulating the methodology. I suggest that you avoid that, and instead, using plain terms, you simply describe the flow of your chapters. So it's just a little improvement, no, from what you already presented. So from the methodology, you can revise that and turn it into a detailed research design. Do you have any questions or reactions to what I've just said?
Thank you, Bodok, Paulo. Because your suggestion is very abundant, and it's very essential for me to correct my design of study. I will correct it again, and yeah, if you have my work influence. Thank you, Boda.
Yeah. By the way, who's your advisor?
I've just asked for Dr. Floyd as my advisor. Yes.
Okay, so she would be able to help you with that part, no? The research design part. Actually, I mean, there's nothing necessarily wrong with the way you presented your methodology, but I think it could be improved further. Because we're trying to teach our students, our grad students in particular, to write the research design that's more appropriate, more straightforward, less complicated, and would actually speak about what's really going on in the thesis. Because there are times when, and I have to reiterate this again, there are times, a lot of times, as a matter of fact, when students, not in your case, no, I just want you to improve on it further. But there are, in the past, there were students who wrote theses. For example, someone who wrote a thesis on Foucault using the Heideggerian hermeneutic circle method. What is that? How can you write a thesis on Foucault using the Heideggerian hermeneutic circle method? So we're trying to actually discourage our students to write their methods that way, or their methodology that way, because you could simply write or formulate a research design where you're just describing exactly what you're doing in your chapters. So if, for example, what you're doing in your first chapter is simply a literature review, then say so, then just say that. or if it's just a reconstruction of the idea of filial piety, and then just say that. It doesn't have to be, let's say, a Heidegger. You don't have to say that my reading, or rather my reconstruction of the idea of filial piety, or in my reconstruction of the idea of filial piety, I'm using the Heideggerian hermeneutic method, which is phenomenologically, which is fundamental phenomenology, and so you're complicating things, okay? And it's not necessary, and doesn't, at the end it will be the work will be exposed for what it is. For example, the example I gave you earlier, someone who wrote a thesis on Foucault using the Heideggerian hermeneutic circle method, whatever that is, it got exposed during the defense, that the method didn't have anything to do with what the student was trying to do. Because what he did was simply a discussion of Foucault. There's nothing Heideggerian hermeneutic there. So anyway, I'll stop now. But it's something that we want to reiterate. At least I would like to reiterate every now and then, to correct what I think has been a practice, no, that has misdirected, many of our grad students. So thank you, and hopefully you find the suggestions helpful.
Yeah. Maraming salamat po, Doc.
All right. Thank you, Doc Pao, for sharing your thoughts on Father Do's essay. Is there anyone else from the group who would like to share their comments? All right. Maybe at this point, there are no further questions from the audience. Perhaps you can message or email Father Do. Father Do, you may perhaps send your email in the chat box, just in case some of the participants would like to have a simple chat with you after the presentation. All right. Okay.
Thank you po.
Okay. Thank you po. Thank you, Father Do. So let's now
Thank you po.
proceed. Yes. Okay. Thank you rin po. Share, Father. All right. At this point, we now proceed to the second speaker. Okay. Okay. So our second speaker, the title is Enhancing the Narrative Ply of Women Teachers through Judith Butler's Performative Feminism. Without further ado, let me all welcome our USPU president and our fellow colleague, Mr. Emerito C. Gonzales.
Yeah, good evening. Good evening.
Good evening po,
Good
sir.
evening. Yeah, good evening. Thank you, Alvin. Can I share screen? All right. You. So yes, thank you very much for this chance, because I really need the conversation, and I know that with you, my dear co-students and colleagues, okay, I will really get some in-depth insights. Okay. Yeah, let me begin with the yung ugat, the root, and then I'll go to the branch that I was able to work on the branch. Yeah, this one is the root. I'll just actually I presented this in the PAP World Philosophy Day conference, because it was the only one, and I already anticipated that it would have been better if there was a whip on this one before the conference, but since the schedule was loaded, so I already saw that baliktad kumbaga. Anyway, so yeah, that's a tentative title. And how did it happen? Well, the study begins with an online focus group discussion with several female teachers in the philosophy department, our department of the arts and letters in the University of Santo Tomas. Their answers or insights are considered on the basis of how the university's services for its women faculty members can be improved. Their phenomenological narratives are the supporting data, which will be analyzed with the insights on performative feminism of Judith Butler. Despite the social teachings of the Catholic Church, the periodically updated collective bargaining agreement, some rights of the female members are not authentically addressed. Despite the Safe Spaces Act, the Labor Code, and the Anti-Discrimination Law, the woman teacher still feels lagging behind her male counterpart in the academia. Despite the efforts towards the no teacher left behind ideal, some interests of the women teachers are missed or set aside in favor of the seemingly more urgent ones. And actually, I'm thankful that Sir Alvin already began this session of Do It with the reminder of the Safe Spaces Act. So I captured it in this question. What can the performative feminism of Judith Butler offer to help improve the welfare of women teachers? One crucial factor in policymaking is the gender hierarchy, which has remained heterosexually biased in approach or norms all these decades. The gender hierarchy applied from the very start is self-serving and one-sided. It automatically advances heterosexual subordination at the expense of the female interests. Butler implies that our naturalized knowledge of gender is a changeable or revisable reality. It can be remade differently and less violently. It can be improved using multiple lenses or several cultural contexts all at once. It points to a hope that there is enough room to make the workplace of women teachers more livable. As for the framework, yeah, I followed this one. Several female teachers of the Faculty of Arts and Letters in UST are asked to answer the following question. Which aspects or areas in your workplace as a teacher do you feel treated negatively or less because you're a female? And briefly state why you feel so and what solution can you recommend? The majority of the women teachers working in the university may be contented depending on their respective teaching assignments, seniority at work, rank, and expertise, while a handful may have more dissatisfaction and recommendations. The study will focus on the discontent and the suggestions of the quote-unquote neglected few, so as to enhance gender equality in making the needed improvements in the workplace. Did I find it significant? Yes. Experts believe that feminism has evolved through 4 waves already from the late 1990s to the present. Butler herself admits that she is a latecomer into the second wave of feminism, going into the third wave. I wonder why the Philippines has complied to the appeals or demands of feminism only up to the first and second waves. The data gathered will be used to back up the requests of faculty members to top officials for better benefits. It is not the intention of the author to put in bad light any group within the academic institution. Rather, this study is an invitation to collaborate more towards gender sensitivity and gender equality in the academic workplace. So respondent teachers urged the university, as to the results, to put up a gender and development, a GAD office separate from the Student Welfare and Development Board, the SWDB, and distinct from the faculty tribunal by the Office of the Rector or the Grievance Committee of the Union. The GAD is required by the Commission on Higher Education as mandated by the law. The aim of the GAD is to eliminate gender biases towards better realization of the potentials of women teachers as they perform active roles in the academy. One female teacher feels she is treated not so favorably in research. Her topic is not part of the mainstream program. Very often, her work on parenting and or feminism is not taken seriously by her colleagues, who are mostly males. She wishes that the research environment be made more inclusive, where researchers thrive authentically and equally. Another one doubts the appointments given to the female teachers. Majority of the chairpersons appointed in the committees are men, and the ladies feel that their appointment in a committee is merely a token, just to make it appear that there is a woman in the group. Thus, she suggests that the administration show more sincere appreciation of what the women teachers can do and can do. Most often, the female teachers are assigned to tasks which are coded work for women. For instance, the reception committee, the group in charge for hotel reservations, the banquet committee, or the travel and recreation committee. Very seldom are they assigned as members of the scientific committee or the committee for planning or for program implementation. 3 female teachers feel they are not given enough chances to teach the major subjects, or their respective specializations are not offered as part of the curriculum. Their male and female students begin to doubt the capacity or competence of the said female teachers to handle the majors. Although they are much willing to advise the students in thesis writing, the lady teachers seldom get the chance to mentor the students who ironically did not get the chance to be exposed to the field of expertise of the said female teachers. Another notable suggestion is to give priority to the schedule of work as preferred by the mother teacher up to the time her child has turned 8 years old. The mother teachers also remember the need for a lactation room in every building and a daycare center in the workplace. Both of these are mandated for by the law, but the school administration continues to ignore these directives. I'll shift to the other one. This one. So that was the root maugat na nailagay, and this is one of the branch that I was able to develop. So I began with discussing what feminism is, okay, and what is there. Okay, the main question ought to be broken into, coming from this, okay, what can the performative feminism of Butler offer to improve the welfare of women teachers? It will be broken down to the main 3 smaller questions. What is feminism? What is performative feminism? What does performative feminism suggest to improve the welfare of women teachers? Feminism aims to gain a more substantial equality for women or a more just arrangement for women in the social and political institutions. However, it does not presuppose a common ground that leads to a conclusive program. Rather, the program of feminism goes forward by giving critical attention to its premises, which are then clarified as it negotiates the diverse interpretations of the issues and representation of women. The feminist theory and the feminist movement are distinct yet reciprocal entities in such a way that the feminist movement is the content of the feminist theory. The feminist theory is not limited within the academe. Instead, it happens whenever a new possibility is imagined, or a collective self-reflection takes place, or a disagreement over values, priorities, and language emerges. Furthermore, the feminist theory leads to performative feats. It is the start of social and political transformation And then it is followed up by the interventions of concrete actions, sustained work, and institutionalized practice. For example, what would be a better life for women teachers in the university? Who determines how it is improved? Who is included or not? How can we influence the academe to put new values or new meanings for women teachers? Butler strongly suggests that the institution would stop legislating for all lives what is livable only for some people, and to stop recommending for all lives what is non-livable for many people. For instance, a certain change of policy in the workplace may be more beneficial to men teachers, but disadvantageous to women teachers. Butler believes that the pursuit of identity, or even just the desire for identity, is a transformative effort. There are the desires for recognition or identity at work, because a livable life goes through several degrees of stability. For example, we may ask, are the women teachers not yet stable enough in their work in the academy? The answer to this can be both affirmative and negative, because it depends on how much recognition is given to the women teachers, and behind their discontent is the desire to live better. To the second part, what is performative feminism? Several views of performative feminism began in the late 1990s. One of its popular advocates since then is Judith Butler, an American philosopher and socio-political thinker. Performative feminism is a feminist political movement aligned with the democratic process, but it does not begin from the usually imposed binary types and distinctions of gender. Performative feminism highlights the following. Sexual difference is not relevant for a democratic citizenship. Democracy is the confluence of several axes of difference, identity, and subordination on gender issues. Third, political judgments can be made without known rules. New universals can be created, and new communities can be formed. Fourth, there is no single definition of the woman. Fifth, my identity is created as I live and externalize who I am. And sixth, feminism is the project of anticipating and creating better political futures, but without presuppositions. Performative feminism then appeals to the other people, that the concepts of dignity and of infinite value in each person be upheld. Thus, it implies that dignity, autonomy, and personhood are ideals that the people aspire to attain. These are not moral facts that are discovered, applied, or realized. Butler believes that the doer is variably constructed in and through the deed. She goes beyond the usual way of focusing on who is the subject behind the act. Instead, she emphasizes the discursively variable construction of each person in the other person and through the other person. Butler's performative feminism undermines the following claims. One, that there is a stable pre-existing subject prior to the given culture or society. B, that the agent may have been a product of the culture and the agent has the capacity for a reflexive mediation. And C, that the culture and the discourse do not constitute the agent, but restricts or surrounds the agent. Thus, if the doer is prior to the deed itself, then the doer cannot exactly identify with his or her own locality, and the conditions for any local intervention or remedy will not be suitable. In an analogy, Butler says that each person only picks up the tools right there and then where they lie. She is able to use those tools because they are available in front of her. Therefore, in performative feminism, gender is always a doing, but not a doing by a ready-made agent who pre-existed before the act of doing itself. The category of who is a woman cannot be packaged in a one-size-fits-all definition and then be marketed as such internationally by a first world-centric imposition. The better feminist approach is to clarify how it is to be a woman in the variety of cultures or localities. There is a need to reevaluate the local conceptions of who is the feminine and the basic needs and conditions of how to be feminine. The human being, generically, or the woman specifically, is defined differently within varieties of historical and cultural circumstances, and its basic needs and entitlements are also defined differently. In its barest form, my performativity is not a single deed. It is a repetition or a ritual, which I do, and it attains its effects through its naturalization in the context of my body in a culturally sustained temporal duration. For instance, the way I value my own gender is a product of my repeated acts, which are affirmed by the way I present and treat my body, how I dress up, how I prepare and comb my hair, etc. Performative feminism contributes to the enhancement of the conditions of women who live on the sexual margins, while hoping for a more livable life. Any human life becomes foreclosed when the alleged right way, quote unquote, is decided in advance, when what we perceive is right is automatically imposed to all without first trying to enter into the community to discover what is right or proper. What does performative feminism suggest to improve the welfare of women teachers? The women teachers need to be actively involved in the discourses. They must be well represented from the planning up to the implementation of new policies that directly affect women. They cannot be left out from the decisions made on how to improve in their work, who is the more fit employee and or who is not, because different demands ask for assurance and or compliance, and the worker prior to such demands was not yet composed or made ready, and not yet well rehearsed to comply with such expectations. Whenever possible, but not for practicality and convenience, the men and the women must be treated interchangeably at work. This ought to remain as an ideal mindset, given the fact that there are more social disadvantages to women that women go through in the political circumstances of their respective locality. The evaluation undergone must be seen as positive and never negative. When a specific policy is called into question or evaluated, it is being revitalized. It is not necessarily debunked or negated. The given policy by now does not function as effectively as it did long before. For example, the need to review the criteria in giving out appointments as the committee chairman or member, in assigning thesis advisors, in distributing teaching load, and in prioritizing work schedules. For the better exercise of self-determination, the policies of the institution wherein viable choices are made and maintained need to be improved. Thus, the clamor of the women teachers to stop discrimination at the workplace is consistent with Butler's overarching maxim that the possibilities of a more livable life must be maximized, while the possibilities of a non-bearable life must be minimized. For indeed, the livable life is the one that surpasses the human life. Thank you. Thank you very much for your attention and time. On a personal note, I humbly admit that this academic effort is more of a work in progress And yes, it is my first ever attempt to write something about feminism, and first time also on the perspectives of Judith Butler. With your comments and suggestions, I hope this will not be my last attempt. Will be more prolonged later. Okay. Good evening. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Sir Emer, for sharing your thoughts on Judith Butler's Performative Feminism. We are now opening the floor for your comments and suggestions. Anyone from the group would like to share their pointers to our speaker?
Hello, can you
Yeah,
can you
go
hear
ahead,
me?
Bob.
Hey, hello, Doc. Sige po. All right.
Yeah, I thought hindi nakita yung raise hand.
All right.
Anyway, just to start the ball rolling, and hopefully there are some suggestions or comments from the other members of the audience. But I'd like to say, Sir Emmer, that this is a marked improvement, no, from the previous presentations you've shared. And I'm glad that your reading of Butler is it's slowly getting deeper. You're getting deeper into the core, no, of Butler's work. And I'm glad that that's the trajectory of your research. The first part, so wala naman akong question actually. It's just a commendation. Maybe my only observation is because you presented two things. The first part you called the roots. Second part is where you actually delve into Butler. And I'm glad that you presented the second part, because in the first part I was waiting for precisely the philosophical, yung more hefty philosophical part of your research. And one of the questions that I was about to ask is, can you elaborate on the Butler part? But indeed, you did that in the second presentation. So the only thing I can say now is keep up the good work. And wala yata si Jen dito si Jen Lombos. If Jen were here, I would have recommended that the two of you should have a conversation, because there are only a couple of people who are working on Butler in the department at the moment. It's Jen Lombos and yourself.
Yeah. All right.
I am a reader of Butler, although I'm by no means a Butlerian scholar or expert, but I'm a reader of Judith Butler. And so I'm quite familiar to some extent with her feminism, and more but more on the latter Butler, the Butler of the critique of violence. It's more on the
one.
yes, this critique of violence, and more specifically on his book on nonviolence.
Yeah.
What I'm quite well, I'm glad that you've chosen Butler. But sige, ang suggestion ko maybe that Jen and you can have a long conversation
really.
about this. Kasi you have the same, sana nga matapos kayong sabay na ni Jen So hopefully Jen, if you're here or if you're going to watch this video, please have a conversation with Sir Emer. So yun lang muna, and then we'll let the others share their thoughts.
Yeah, I'll text her. Yeah, let me comment. Yeah, actually, I was could have been, but yung schedule nga talaga baliktad na nakita ko na mas maganda sana. And Gina and Peter were there in the PAT, and I feel that meron talagang gap na I'm trying hard na itali ko siya, pero yung sinulit na ginagamit ko is parang mahina. Mahina. And I felt that in the questions that came in the chat box, and Peter there was the moderator, and Peter was very kind enough to more or less lend me the karayom or point me to this direction. Okay, thank you, Peter, for that, and thank you, Gina, for the support. Yeah. Yes, I think the Marela.
All right. Let's recognize Doc Marella. I think she has a question.
Yes.
Good evening, Sir Emer. Sorry. It's not actually a question, but how would I say this? I would like to thank you for taking the lead in really writing the paper. I mean, you were interested in the report that we presented, and you sent me several messages after that. And yeah, so it's more of like, thank you for continuing to work on the paper. And while you were presenting, I was just reminded of what Bell Hooks said in one of her books, the will to change, men, masculinity, and love. She passed away today, and she said that feminism as a movement cannot be won until we turn men into our side. So I think that's just all that I want to say. Thank you, Sir Emer.
All right. Thank you, Doc Marella, for that question, and Doc Pao for your comments.
Mr. Rochi.
Sir Rochi.
Hello, narinig po ako?
Yes, sir.
Ayan.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
President. Yeah, President. Good evening. Merry Christmas to all. If I got it right, based on your presentation, if I had it right, you will make use of some evaluations.
Yeah.
Yun lang. I'm curious with that. How is it conducted? The one conducted by the university, by the department? In any rate, how will you secure yung gathered data of that in terms of privacy, mga ganun ba?
Yes.
Because I know this is a very much needed kind of articulation, especially on advocacies na pinupush ng ating department, of course, with our female colleagues, no? Yun lang. I'm just how are you can you describe I don't know if your design, how will you handle
that one? Okay, I already initially consulted Sir Bobby Montaña in this one, and Sir Bobby had a very interesting paper, article published in Ciencia. And then nag-converse kami ni Bob, and also Marela, mga suggestions in the process of consulting with Dr. Manny Batoon on the empirical side, of it also. Now the suggestions, the more realistic suggestion that I got is that to start it only with a focused group discussion, because on the other hand, when I had a conversation with Marela, is that baka mamaya we are wondering and we are fielding the question all throughout, pero wala naman talaga. Baga, how do you call it in fishing? We are casting our nets pero wala naman talagang isda doon. And only in this college or in this department there is that problem, or are aware. Because actually I asked the same, and there was one respondent who is from political science and another one from sociology in AB, and none, walang impact sa kanila. They never felt that they were discriminated against, mga ganun. None at all. But wala talaga daw. So okay daw sila throughout their career, and they are not newly hired. They are already one of the seniors in pol sci, another senior in sociology. And that's it makes me wonder na that's only in AB, arts and letters yun. Now there are other suggestions naman that came out. Let's say if you fill that out, let's say the male-dominated departments or colleges like mechanical engineering or ganun. Baka, I don't know, kung merong babaeng faculty na nandun, magiging respondent. So, yun yung isang balancing act that I will dwell on later. But as of the moment, I am more, mga step 1, 2, 3 siguro will be all on butlers. And then next later on 4 and 5 and 6 will be more on forming the question. Okay. And then, yeah, of course, Sir Bob or maybe Doc Manny Batuan, they can be consulted into that formation. And then the data gathering, yeah, that's another question that, yes, of course, is crucial. But as of the moment, I really haven't given the specific, what do you call it, path towards this. Because I still am more on Butler. And actually, honestly, and with the words of Pao and Marela now, maybe it gave me more reason not to back out because, you know, feminism really, yes, of course, one way or another, feminism, we have to talk about it. We have to carry it on our shoulder. But so far, ako, I feel not so really into it yet. But as I dig deeper into Butler, ang una ko kasing inclination kay Butler really was towards non-violence and the political, thanks to Doc Power. But then, yes, this chance came out na para bang nag-detour ng konti to see what Butler has to offer on feminism. As of the moment, yeah, with this paper and the past few weeks and months that I have built into it, yeah, I think I have dug nagkukay ako, but it's like para bang tinatanong ko, maybe I am hitting on the right area, but I am not yet hitting the sweet spot. Not yet the sweet spot, and with assurance of power that I am digging enough. Siguro, yeah, I'll do continue.
I was eyeing kasi Kuya Emer yung sabi mo kanina, the thin line that somehow will strengthen the two components. I was eyeing on this kasi
Yes.
you have the data back up, at least you sa position mo. I just don't know how it will be
treated.
You see you see na dyan ka na sa position where you can see now 360 what is going on sa university insofar as this issue is concerned. With regard to the department, pwede din siguro itatap natin the whole membership. The permission that we will be conducting this and so on.
Okay.
Yeah, that's one point I'm seeing to strengthen your position, to support, to push forward your thesis statement. The other one is yun din. I'm also trying to secure what if halimbawa you ask the students and then that student pala has grudge against the professor, then I might make use of this, but even though it's a different context, baka binagsak ko yung bata and so on, and then on this one is try to get yung mga ganun ba. I really don't know how.
I think Doc Rod, I think I'll limit it with the teachers lang.
Okay. Sige po, yan.
No comment.
Just in case, last thing, you mentioned the teachers. Yun din, who will see the results?
Yes.
Limbawa, are we willing the membership, the faculty to see this? Yan. So who will see the results? Yun, doon ako nag-ikot, may context where I'm coming from when I talk about yung yung privacy
Yes,
kanina.
data privacy, yeah.
Unless mag-waive yung guro na yon, no, na yes, I'm opening my evaluation to membership. Yun. Yun lang po. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Rod. I will consider that. Okay. Si Sir Franz daw. Sir Alvin. Yep.
Thank you, Sir Emer.
Yep.
Sir, is this parang you're planning to this is to become your dissertation eventually? Yung ba yun? Yung this is the
Pwede.
Okay. Pero right now it's just parang a paper, a research paper, pero hindi talaga siya.
Yeah, the clear within the parameter, what's clear is within Butler, and I am also in the words of Pao, I'm trying to connect it to something that is of a novelty in our locality.
Okay, kasi yung aking mga questions siguro medyo ang iniisip ko na baka kasi magiging eventually it will be part of your dissertation. So ang mga ko halimbawa points to ponder ay yung bang empirical data to provide a context lang. That's what you call the root, no? So are you trying to provide a context for your study on Butler? Parang ilalagay mo lang sa introduction yung empirical data na yon, or bahagi rin talaga ito ng body of the paper? So these are some points to ponder.
Sige.
Parang ganun ba? Na parang doon sa presentation kanina, it appears to be a context.
Yes.
Pero if it will be a full-blown dissertation, baka doon sa loob mismo part siya talaga so yun lang yun isang and then I'm also trying to consider questions such as kailan gagawin ang individual interview, kailan ang focus group discussion.
Yep.
Yung bang what could be the but of course Dr. Manny Baton and Dr. Montaña can respond to this masasagot. Pero yun considerations din yun.
Yes.
Kailan bagay ang individual interview, kailan bagay ang focus
group discussion.
And then sino ang prospective respondents? I mean, of course faculty members, but ano ang criteria para maging respondents? For example, simply by being a faculty member, are you
tenured faculty member pataas siguro.
Okay, so tenured faculty members,
female.
And female, should be female. Isang tanong ko rin, why not lalaki?
Yun nga isa Tama, magandang tanong yan kasi may issue na sa third gender din.
Yeah, how about the other sexes ngayon din yung isang tanong.
Correct.
These are some points to ponder.
Okay. Yeah. Kasi with the climate of the third gender is another another sanga kumbaga na luluwag.
Thank you, Sir Emer.
Yeah. Thank you, Doc Franz.
All right, thank you, Doc Franz and Doc Rochi, for sharing your comments for the improvement of Sir Emer's paper. Yeah. Anyone else from the group would like to share their thoughts and insights? Yes, Doc Pao. Yes. And then afterward, then Gerard. Yes. All right.
Yeah, just very quickly, Sir Emer, you mentioned one of the criteria in choosing the respondents is that the respondents should be tenured. I don't have a real problem with that. The only thing that I have issue with is I think because I think the main problem of the research, which hopefully is something that you will develop for your dissertation, kasi mahirap nang magbago at this stage. Kasi you're really elbows deep into Butler.
Yeah.
So if ang aking recommendation is ituloy-tuloy na ito kasi may momentum na siya. But my only issue with interviewing tenured faculty, of course we need to interview tenured faculty, but I think discrimination also happens at the lowest level.
Yeah, yeah.
So meaning maybe some tenured faculty are not really vocal, or parang they're not really interested in talking about their experiences of discrimination kasi they're already
safe.
tenured.
They're safe
right?
already. Yeah.
Safe na sila. Meaning, so what? What's the point? No? So that's my initial reaction when I heard that some female faculty from other disciplines like Pol Sci or siguro sa ibang colleges, that they're nonchalant about it. Because maybe there are many possibilities. First, I don't know if they have the vocabulary or the language to talk about their experiences of discrimination, the way that we in philosophy and maybe literature, we have that language, we have that facility, we have the vocabulary to describe those those types of experiences. Pero sa kanila, maybe their experience of the discrimination is simply reduced to, let's say, power play.
Yeah.
Na ako babae ako, but I've surpassed I've overcome all those na hindi nila na-realize na kaya sila nahirapan. Meron palang gender issue. And the fact that I call this I don't know, ayaw ko na magsalita, pero sa tingin ko ayaw ko magsalita, no? I don't want to divulge certain facts na for sure alam ko na may nangyayari sa ibang disciplines.
Yeah. I get
and I don't want to mention names also. Pero kung meron bang gender bias, actually meron talaga. Hindi sila nagsasalita, maybe, I don't know, maybe they've created this protective barrier of some sort. That could be a reason too, or they're not, they don't have the language, as I have pointed out earlier.
Agree.
So that could be a reason. Pero I'm more concerned about the narratives of the non-tenured.
Yeah. Okay.
Kasi sa tingin ko doon nagsisimula.
Yes.
Kasi the struggle, the power play, if you want, the struggle ay nagsasimula doon pa lang. Baba pa lang. So doon na nalalagyan ng branding, for example.
Yes.
Na ito ganyan, ito mark na yang faculty na yan, o ito nandun nag-uumpisa yon. Nandun nag-uumpisa yon. So I think hindi naman kinakailangan marami yung interviewees eh. But if it's well represented, I think the study, in as much as the study is about gender discrimination, I think it should be more reflective or more inclusive of non-tenured, tenured, diba? And maybe representatives from different I don't know, of course you could delimit your study, pwedeng AB lang.
Yeah.
Hindi naman kinakailangan malaki kasi it's something that you could there will be iterations later on once you're finished with your PhD. You could actually use the same process to study other colleges. So it could be just the Faculty of Arts and Letters, but broader in the sense that you include non-tenured, tenured, senior and then senior faculty.
Yes.
And maybe categorizing faculty based on teaching faculty and research faculty.
Yeah.
And of course, siguro it's going to be a more robust study than the point of view of ang tag dito of different genders, siguro, including the male gender. I think there's a way of making it broader, but at the same time manageable. Na hindi naman kalat sa buong university, but then you just concentrate on one college. AB is a good, kasi wala, that's go, the novelty of the studies, wala pang gumagawa niyan.
Yes.
And it could become a basis later on for establishing an office na wala pa ang UST, an office for gender. I don't know, how do you gender in God? So and as president of USFU, I think that's going to be your legacy, if ever. Thank you, Sir Emer.
Yeah, thank you, Pao, for those very helpful insights. Yeah, thank you, Rog. Assured. See, Gerard.
Thank you, Doc, Pao, for sharing your comments. We now recognize another question from the audience, Mr. Gerard Arcamo.
Sir, good evening, sir. Narinig na po ako.
Yep.
Sir, actually, hindi naman po question, sir, pero ayun po, nasabi na po kasi ni Doc Pao yung naisip ko rin po, one of the points po yung about sa mga non-tenured din po.
Yeah.
Kasi ayun din po kasi para maging more inclusive din in regards to that study. And apart from that, sir, gusto ko rin din po sabihin na it's very timely and it's a good topic since yung about po sa feminism. Since di ba po parang since dominated by male, di ba, dominated by men yung not just here, di ba po, hindi lang naman po sa faculty but the entire workplace, no, even beyond philosophy, even beyond it's the workplace in general, di ba? I think it's a good start po na there's someone who will talk about this and write about this in a position of power, like such as yourself po, since you're the president of PhD faculty union.
Walang power doon. Service yun.
In a position of like sa position po na kung saan may influence po, like din po yung it was
Gerard,
also good,
actually, Gerard, I would like to thank Dr. Rocci for pointing it out. It's like a 360 vantage point lang talaga yung kinaibahan. Marami kang naririnig, marami kang nalalaman.
Opo, tama po. Opo. Yun nga po, yun, no, tama rin po no na at sa position niyo po, marami no rin po kayong nakikita na yun po, may nakita rin niyo po yung mga problems in regards to the faculties is starting po dito, at least we have to start somewhere, diba? And it's good na it's good that we have to start here.
Yeah, thank you.
So ayun po, actually sabi na rin po kasi ni Doc.
Thank you for appreciating the novelty.
Ayun po, na-appreciate ko rin po talaga kasi I think yung iba po kasi natatakot I think one of the reasons po why some do not speak out about this kasi natatakot din sila na baka mali yung understanding ko of a particular thing. Tapos I think it's good na someone would talk about this na who has the capability also of starting a change in the workplace po. In this sense, the faculty in UST. So I think it's good po wala naman pong question na appreciate ko lang po. Kasi na-appreciate ko po yung.
Thank you for the show of support. Yeah.
Yes po.
Thank you. Yes, Franz. Doc Franz.
Mabilis lang, Sir Emer.
Yes,
yung reiterate ko lang yung ang interview, kasama rin sana sa may interview yung mga lalaki kasi not necessarily the same questions kung hindi yung babae, pero parang ito na yung opportunity sana na ma-exhaust natin talaga yung data.
Sige. I will consider that. The males be interviewed but different questions siguro, parallel questions.
Parang baka may makuha kang enlightening
may revelation.
May revelation.
May eureka.
Sige,
thank you. Thank you very much for your insights. Thank you.
Thank you, Doc Franz, for your insights and comments. Ako, Doc, Sir Emer, pwede ba akong mag-share?
Oh, sure.
It's actually not a question, but it's more of a comment. I was wondering, why in the senior high school they would only hire male faculties. Well, in fact, there were 2 female faculties, but they only lasted for a semester. It was deliberate among the administrators. Lalaki lang lahat. Although kahit yung mga female parang mga nag-a-apply, they would deliberately hire male faculties lang sa philosophy.
Sa
Asking
philosophy.
the same thing sa senior high school. May mga applicant. Kaya nga, no wonder since parang 2016 lang yung na-open yung senior high school. Parang 1 sem lang talaga yung female, 2 female faculties. The rest, hanggang ngayon, male lang.
So,
it was deliberate.
Really,
I asked, Sir, kaya mabuti tinatanong mo yung mga male faculties. Mabuti rin, maganda rin yun para itanong kung bakit kami lang. Ako, actually, tinanong ko yun kay
Einstein.
Kay Einstein. Bakit gano'n? Tumatawa lang siya pero talagang deliberate na hindi mag-hire ng female faculty sa senior high school.
Okay.
Kahit may female applicant.
So thank you for that clue. I think I should interview Einstein also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Siguro one of the administrators din doon.
Yeah.
Lang naman. Salamat po.
Si Marela, meron po daw.
I think isa sa dahilan doon ay yung perception nila na pag philosophy, it's for ex-seminarians. So baka they do have this feeling na ex-seminarians na philosophy majors are more capable of teaching the subject compared to female lay philosophy majors who took their ABs sa Faculty of Arts and Letters. Baka meron silang ganoong idea, especially yung previous principal or still the principal of senior high school is the same. And I think yung kanyang PhD, she was once, was she part of the theology department before she joined? So baka doon nagagaling yung idea na yon na philosophy is for seminarians, ex-seminarians.
May perception kasi, Doc, na gano'n.
Okay.
Salamat po, Doc Marela.
Yeah, thank you.
May I add something?
Yes, Doc.
This is a revelation. It's the first time that I hear this.
Yep.
Maybe instead of Einstein, you could ask Einstein, of course, but I don't think Einstein could really give you the actual reason. Maybe interviewing the administrators, who, by the way, are interestingly enough, that started during the time of Dr. Romero, when the senior high school started, and now the principal is a Bolaños, whom I'm not
related.
Related. So kaya nalilito sila. I remember a few years ago, I think a couple of years ago, someone sent me, hindi directly to me, pero parang kinongratulate ako for becoming the new senior high school principal, and so I had to put out a disclaimer that I'm not the Bolaños you're referring to. But it's interesting kasi dapat sila mismo, given that there are, parang nasa higher tier na sila ng administration, principal, and then yung isa, dean ngayon ng education. There are the higher tier already. So, they should be the ones who will first consider or even acknowledge, the I don't know, maybe the capacity of female applicants. But if the perception na lalaki lang ang philosophy, and there's something wrong, there's something terribly wrong then with their perception. Of course, both of them are from theology, from the Institute of Theology. Pero it's even I don't get that. Of course, it's all about bias, pero I think it's terribly disturbing that perception is still there. So if tama yung sinasabi ni Alvin that it's a deliberate on their part, I'm pretty sure there's no policy about it. but if it's deliberate on their part, then it's something that needs to be
Parang SM, pag iglesia yung aplikante, pasok agad. Pag hindi iglesia, delayed.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Pao, Doc.
Thank you, Doc Pao, for sharing your thoughts.
Thank you,
Doc Marela
Alvin.
po. Yeah, thank you po. All right. Are there more questions, or we could see some messages from the chat box? Okay. Yeah. Perhaps you can peruse
Yes, I will.
messages there. Okay.
Yep. Thank you, Alvin.
All right. So do we still have any other questions or suggestions? All right. If there's none, can we proceed to the third and last paper presentation? Okay. So the title of the last presenter is titled Philosophical Commentary on Government, Intervention on Education, Human Rights, and Activism in Philippine Universities. Let us all welcome our fellow colleague, Dr. Robert A. Montaña.
Hello, good evening po.
Hello, good evening po, Doc.
Share lang ako ng screen ko. Okay na, nakikita niyo na.
Yes, Doc.
Okay. So my study for this year is entitled A Philosophical Commentary on Government Intervention on Education, Human Rights, and Activism in Philippine University. So this is my abstract. In January 2021, Lieutenant General Antonio Parlade Jr., who is now running for president, was the spokesperson of the NPF-LCAP. He issued a statement that 18 universities in the Philippines, among them Eastern University, La Salle, UST, Ateneo, serve as recruiting grounds by the legal fronts of the Communist Party of the Philippines, or the NPA. In response to this, a joint statement was made reaffirming the university's commitment to defend democracy and nation building. However, reminding the government that autonomy and independence from the state must nonetheless be retained. Okay, so this is the things that I would endeavor to achieve in this study. I will have a pedagogical determination of the role of education as a vital catalyst of stability and change in contemporary times. And second, a resolution of the possible human rights conflict between individual and institutional academic freedom and the constitutional mandate of the AFP to secure the integrity of the national territory. And third, to reevaluate the notion of academic activism and its relevance or danger to the citizens' adherence to the provisions of the Philippine Constitution. So I would provide a commentary to these philosophical issues. Okay, so let's go to facts first. Let us cite the Constitution directly. So in Section 5, it is mentioned there that the state shall take into account regional and sectoral needs and conditions and shall encourage local planning in the development of educational policies and programs. And academic freedom shall be enjoyed in all institutions of higher learning. This is the only part of the Constitution wherein academic freedom was more or less mentioned. So we will later on look at the Supreme Court cases on how academic freedom was defined by the Supreme Court and how it should be understood more or less in a legal way, not necessarily in a philosophical way. Now, as regards the military, the Constitution is has mentioned a lot of or has a lot of provisions on the military. So civilian authority is at all times supreme over the military. The armed forces of the Philippines is the protector of the people in the state, and its goal is to secure the sovereignty of the state and the integrity of the national territory. So this is one arm of my study, that is the constitutional mandate uh, of the military to establish integrity in the national territory and sovereignty of the state. While at the same time, there is also a constitutional provision on academic freedom. Now, it seems in the what we call this, the problem raised by NTFL, CAC, and the universities, it seems that there is an apparent conflict, no, between two institutions following their constitutional mandates. So that is the objective of this study, to philosophically, although we will not be able to avoid looking at the legalities of understanding this concept, but the study is primarily philosophical. Other constitutional what they call these determinations of the military can be found here in Section 5. All members of the armed forces shall take an oath or affirmation to uphold and defend the Constitution. In other words, the military should follow the Constitution. And it only follows the president because the Constitution mandates the military to consider the president as its commander-in-chief. However, if the president is no longer there and we have already a new president, then that new president will now have the control of the military. Because stability-wise, what the military follows is supposed to be the Constitution. So the state shall strengthen the patriotic spirit and nationalist consciousness of the military and respect for people's rights in the performance of their duty. So what is important here is the notion of the respect, no, for people's rights. In other words, the military should respect people's rights in the performance of their duty. That is why we should be able to determine both legally and philosophically the extent by which we academic freedom would give a university or its professors or its students leeway, you know, as regards the freedom of thought that they should exercise. At the same time, establish also the parameters that the military has in trying to defend the state. Okay. Now, in Section 24, the Constitution was also quite clear. No? Private armies and other armed groups not recognized by duly constituted authority shall be dismantled. All paramilitary forces, including the civilian home defense forces, not consistent with the citizen armed force, these are the reservists, established in this Constitution shall be dissolved or where appropriate converted into the regular force. So, there is a constitutional mandate, no, against the NPA. In other words, these are private armies and these are armed groups and not recognized by duly constituted authority. However, before this constitution was enacted and approved, no, by majority of the people, there was a lot of confusion, even during the Marcos era, as regards the role of the military and the role of the NPA, what the NPAs were doing. In fact, during that time, the military was under the control of the 1973 Constitution. Okay, so I will mention here some student victims that were validated to have been either missing or they actually informed their parents that they are NPA. So we have Queen Lynn Bromeo, she was last in 2016, a student of PUP, recruited by an Akbayan at the age of 16. She wrote a letter to her family when she joined the NPA. Kapam, Louvain Erica Espina, she was missing. Last seen December 2018. Only a grade 11 student, no, from the PUP. She was recruited by Anak Bayan. We have Trisha Antoniano, no, Tasha, missing. She was last seen May 8, 2018. She was only grade 11 from the PUP. And she was recruited by Anak Bayan and League of Filipino students. She's still missing. So we don't know if she's already an NPA or not. But by the fact that she was part of Anak Bayan, I think they are assuming that she's an NPA. Francis Ern Meribeles, missing. She was last seen February 2020 and studied at the PUP Santa Mesa. She was recruited by Anak Bayan and NFS. She was seen in a video footage admitting that she's an NPA. This video footage was recovered by the 20th Infantry Battalion. Okay, so before I proceed to the next slide, I will show you a short video.
Site in Quezon Province features the training of NPAs who these videos are presented to the media as an evidence of new people's arming data in schools through their legal fronts, claiming that they are merely progressive organizations. One video was recovered at the blast site of the surgical strike in summer last October 26, 2019. This video clearly identified and discovered the personalities among HR, Francis Ern Meribeles and Karen May Diaz, both from PUP Santa Mesa, and a certain Eilish Castro, who confirmed to be taking up political science at the University of Santo Tomas. They were all initially members of Anak Bayan, League of Filipino Students, Kabataan Party List, etc., while they were still in school. Another video recovered from the Butler site in Quezon Province in 2000 features the training of NPAs who were later identified as former student members of Progressive Group. One of those in the video is Alexandria, who was jailed after her arrest last September 13, 2000. The other is certain Ivan Ortiz, a BS Forestry student from the UST-GS, who became the University Student Council Vice Chairperson. Other personalities are still connected. The third video was recovered last December by a jury for enforcement operation to the force that led to neutralization of Atlas Atulan, the leader of the sub-regional military territory. The video was shown in the video positively identified the former Miss Jacqueline. Miss Jacqueline is one of the mothers from the hands of our children.
Sa hinaba-haba ng panahon, 3 taong ka nang nawawalan sa pamilya natin.
The scheme for NPA recruitment in schools began by using activism to radicalize the students using common societal issues. Slowly, they are being immersed in the organization where they are taught, persuaded, and agitated, leading to join the armed revolution. The videos, together with the reports of students who died as NPAs in encounters, showed that the scheme is obviously alive inside the halls of our academic institution, despite the belief as parents and children will have a bright future. Are we to let our children fall in the wrong hands that will ruin their future?
Okay, so allow me to come back to my presentation. In fact, this one, si Grumeo, no, she wrote a letter to her family, and she was seen in one of those videos. And I think, yeah, I think it's this, no, si Mary Velez. Kaniko was also found in the video. Okay, so this is the steps, no, by which the legal fronts now of the communist movement. This is what they do. This is their 7-step indoctrination plan. This is based on the information of the intel gathered by NTF-ELCA. Mass demonstrations, of course, the CTG constantly cultivates an environment of discontent and agitation. CTG stands for Communist Terrorist Group. One thing I noticed, no, that since the passage of the anti-terrorism bill, the communist group is now being called a terrorist group. Actually, it was already submitted, no, as a terrorist group by the NTF-ELCA. So from state university protests to mass organized marches, the placards change, but the theme remains the same. So they're going to start first by introducing harmless, the harmless form of activism, which is basically a constitutional right, protected right. So it starts with that, no, a mass demonstration. Everybody has the right to go to a rally. And then the second one would be recruiters, no, supported by their front organization and parties. Recruiters are planted in universities to scout for prospective recruits in the movement. They look for idealistic and aggressive youth that they can implant their ideals in. So they're going to extend the activities by befriending people who are idealistic, no, and surely kung aggressive, mas gusto nila yun kasi it will be difficult for them to recruit, no, these people to join the legal fronts. They're still legal. And the educational discussions, no, under the guise of seminars and group discussions, often referred to as educational discussions, the EDs, the CTGs regularly presents relatable issues to the student body in a manner which shows discontent and seditious sentiments. The students present and even some organizers of the EDs are often unaware of the pivotal role this plays in the recruitment of the NPA. So they will not recruit directly. They're going to show first and foremost that we should do something about the problems of society. It's something which that is something which is legal. Not everybody should be concerned about the problems of society. So even the right to be disgruntled against the government is a constitutional right. However, the problem is this becomes the starting point, no, of the recruitment. Now the ARAC and the MKLRP taking the first step into indoctrination. No? So this is the transition point, no, or in business terms, ito yung tipping point. The CTG provides aralin activista, no, the ARAC. So this is what we should be careful of, no, kasi pag yung mga leftist organizers begins to ask our students for further for seminars, no, that would talk about the problems of society, baka kasi pinapasok na nila itong ARAC, no? Or the maikling kurso sa lipunan ng Revolusyong Pilipino, talks and lectures to further the agitation of the youth. The contents of the lectures vary depending on the time, but the message is the same. The only way to solve these problems is to take up arms. So, ipalalabas na nila yung yung frustration. Ito, rally tayong rally, hindi naman nakikinig. Sulat tayo ng sulat sa media, hindi naman binabasa. So, the only way is armed revolution na tayo, di ba? So, yun na yung tipping point, no, wherein they would begin to violate the Constitution. So yun yung problem, no? How do we make the demarcation line between raising valid issues and raising valid action of discontent to number 4. Dito kasi nagta-transition yung movement towards the NPA. And so magkakaroon ng invitation to protest, no? Supplanted by propaganda, the students are invited to join and lead the mass protest themselves. Sila na ngayon yung sumisigaw doon, etc. Okay naman yun, ano? But if you're going to shout, sumali na sa NPA, then that's another thing. Promoting the perception that they are becoming part of a movement despite being uninformed of the history of the banner. And 6, there is the immersion, no? Parang sa community development natin. No? Meron tayong immersion, ano, sa community development programs natin. But this is a different kind of immersion. If you have seen the video, yung mga nakaupo sila, kinakaibigan sila noon. So nagiging magpabarkada na sila. So that is the form of immersion that happened. After leading the protest, the students who have been agitated to their limit are extended an invitation to join community immersions, where they are told they will meet and get to help the communities they rally for. So community service, no? This is basically community service, which is supposedly a legal thing to do. Kaya lang, if you will engage in immersion, pero ang nasa NPA camp ka na, then that's another thing. Upon accepting, they are brought to IPCC communities that have already been subjugated by the NPA and fully indoctrinated to join the armed movement. Trained to handle weapons and taught the ways of guerrilla warfare, they are made to leave their university life behind them and take up arms with the terrorists. Ito na yun. Lumipat na sila ngayon dun sa anti-constitutional mandate na there should only be one armed forces and all the others must be dismantled. And they're going to make comrades out of them. Now, too deep at this point, the students are no longer part of the noble movement they believe they were supporting, but full-fledged communist terrorists, fighting for the violent overthrow of government and the establishment of a communist system in the country. And they are given new names and taught to forget their past life. They have now been successfully indoctrinated in the terrorist movement. Almost none make it home. Siyempre matatakot na sila umuwi. Kasi pag umuwi ka pa, bullying ka na. Marami ka nang alam di ba? Pero hindi naman lahat, no? Kasi I know a certain person na umalis sa NPA, buhay pa naman siya ngayon. Pero yung ibang lumalabas hindi, no? I don't know what's the difference, no? How come they let others leave and they let others they won't let others leave. Siguro yung extent ng knowledge din, no, about the movement. Okay. Now, we now move on to the Supreme Court cases on academic freedom. Kasi ang issue naman natin ngayon is not to prove, no, the recruitment. I think there is enough evidence, no, for recruitment. Nagkaroon na nga ng Senate hearing, but I will not play it anymore. Nag-iiyakan din yung mga magulang, no, belonging to the Hands of Our Children movement. You can go to Facebook and search that, no, yung Hands of Our Children movement. Organization ng magulang yun ng mga nawala ng anak because of this recruitment. Masyado na marami, no, ang evidence, no, or pieces of evidence or evidence na meron talagang recruitment and it cannot anymore be denied because magkakaroon ba tayo ng Hands of Our Children is only one of them. Maraming organizations ng magulang na nawalan ng anak. And even in military operations, maraming napapatay na students. No? Then they later identify na these belong to people who were studying in some universities. Tapos wala na, too late na. May isa nga, nilibing pa nila hindi nila sinauli sa magulang, no? Nilibing nila. Tapos when one of the NPA surrendered to the military, tinuro niya ngayon kung saan nilibing yung comrade niya, no? So yung military pa ngayon yung naghukay nagdala nung ano sa pamilya. Because the NPA, iniwan na lang siya nung parang aso. Hindi siya binigyan ng karangalan na at least maibalik sa pamilya. So, let's talk about academic freedom now. So, I'm going to read some portions of the decisions which, as philosophers, we may attempt to interpret. So, Article 14 of the Constitution guarantees all institutions of higher learning academic freedom. This institutional academic freedom includes the right of the school and college to decide for itself its aims, objectives, and how best to attain them free from outside coercion or interference, possibly when the overriding public interest calls for some restraint. Okay. According to present jurisprudence, academic freedom encompasses the independence of an academic institution to determine for itself who may teach, what may be taught, how it shall teach, and who may be admitted to study. So a recent problem arose now when some universities surrendered their some books of the library to the military, and some schools refused to surrender these materials. I think the Constitution provides academic freedom to these institutions. So if they want to surrender, then let them surrender. If they don't want to surrender, then unless a law mandates them to surrender, they can keep it. But the issue here is the institutions themselves, they are fighting over this. Sila mismo yung nagiging insultuhan kung bakit pinibigay nyo at yung iba naman bakit hindi nyo pinibigay. So parang ang nagiging discussion, gusto namin, sabihin naman ng isang school, ayaw namin. But I think this statement, the overriding public, save possibly when the overriding public interest calls for some restraint. So ibig sabihin, the Constitution itself provides some restraint to academic freedom when overriding public interest calls for it. Now, this is a very difficult thing to interpret. Of course, alam naman natin na bawal ang NPA. So therefore, kung talagang direct na nire-recruit ang NPA, talagang harap-harapan, then I think hindi na yan part ng academic freedom. But the problem is the process of recruitment is slow. Parang ano yan in logic, what we call the argument of the beard. Di ba, malagay ka ng beard na isa, up to what point ba magiging beard? Tapos pag inalis mo, up to what point ka ba wala ng beard? So problem din yan, yung problem of the beard dito, Ano yung action na masasabi natin na nagko-cross ka na nung line ng public interest? Up to what point ba na dun sa recruitment process, masasabi natin na kumakalon ka na dun sa restraints ng academic freedom? Okay, so let's read other sources. A privilege that assumes a correlative duty to exercise it responsibly. Like any other right, however, academic freedom has never been meant to be an unabridged license. It is a privilege that assumes a correlative duty to exercise it responsibly. Okay, this is about the Article 19 of the Civil Code. Dapat daw judicious tayo sa actions natin, etc. But here we see again, the freedom, the academic freedom is limited in the presence of a correlative duty. Now, of course, understood naman natin na there is a correlative duty to read the Constitution in its entirety. Kaya nga, ang nagiging limit na ngayon ng academic freedom would be any violation of other provisions of the Constitution. Now, third, individual has inherent right to develop his faculties. An individual has a natural and inherent right to learn and develop his faculties. For this reason, the 1973 Constitution, this is the 1973, okay. To aid and support the parents in the rearing of the youth, to promote their physical, intellectual, and social being, to establish and ensure social services in the field of education, and to establish and maintain a complete, adequate, and integrated system of education relevant to the goals of national development. So even in the 1973 Constitution, it's already a good constitution supposedly, di ba? So I think it also falls into the kind of leadership, no, to establish justice, no, in society. Minsan maganda ang constitution, no, but if it is implemented wrongly. Pero I think our present constitution, no, kasi yung 1973 Constitution is a very doubtful constitution, eh. Kasi yung 1935 Constitution requires an election. Pero ang nangyari, na-ratify ang 1973 Constitution by use of barangay assemblies, which were pictured to be raising their hands. Pero ang sabi nila, tinatanong lang daw sinong gutom na. So walang registration of voters, tapos pinicturan lang taas ang kamay. Tapos sinabi na kagad ni Marcos na therefore the 1973 Constitution has been ratified. And the Supreme Court considered this as a political movement, as a political act, and therefore nagbotohan sila, yung vote nila was not enough toward the political act. So, naging valid constitution siya legal in 1973. Pero morally, hindi. Diba? Kasi nga, hindi talaga siya in-enact by an election. Okay. So, academic freedom, the term as it evolved to describe the emerging rights related to intellectual liberty, has traditionally been associated with freedom of thought, speech, expression, and the press. In other words, with the right of individuals in university communities, such as professors, researchers, and administrators, to investigate, pursue, discuss, and in the immortal words of Socrates, to follow the argument wherever it may lead, free from internal and external interference or pressure. But obviously, its optimum impact is best realized where the freedom is exercised judiciously and does not degenerate into unbridled license. So, nandiyan na naman yung critical words of statutory construction, no? Judiciously at saka unbridled license. Okay. So, ang problema kasi dito, baka naman yung mandate naman ng military masyado na pumasok dun sa legal aspects or the right to academic freedom. So, in the succeeding months, no, there are already philosophers that are already in my mind on how to philosophically resolve this. Kasi up to what point ba, di ba? There are other things na, like for example in academic freedom, to talk about revolution, it's not supposed to be what do you call this, against the Constitution. Unless while you're talking about revolution, you're asking people to join an armed movement. Actually, NPA is not the only armed movement, no, that the military has seen, no. In fact, the military is trying to look at other armed groups, no. Ay ibang armed groups na checkpoint pa eh. Pero nahuhuli sila ng mga members ng military, tapos nag-uusap-usap, oy, meron ng movement dito ng other armed groups na hindi naman NPA. So basically, it is the military that is guarding, no, the cities and the rural areas, not only against the NPA, but there are a lot of armed groups actually. Kaya lang NPA yung pinaka-dominant, no, kasi meron silang national leaders. Unlike yung iba kasi mga local ano lang sila, local rebels. So, last slide ko na to, the academic freedom enjoyed by institutions of higher learning includes the right to set academic standards to determine under what circumstances failing grades suffice for the expulsion of students. Once it has done so, however, the standard should be followed meticulously. Kasi nagkaroon tayo ng issue sa UST naman, di ba? When the university, I think, did not allow one of our students to enroll because she was a member of a leftist organization. Ano ba yun? Nag-exercise ba na academic freedom ang university? Well, basically, if you're going to read the Supreme Court cases, no, right ng isang university to determine these things, no? Yung sino mag-enroll, the quality of its students, etc., even the quality of its professors. Kaya lang, baka lang maging arbitrary kasi baka iba-ibang schools mag-interpret ng iba't ibang paraan. Like for example, in another school, mag-member ka ng isang leftist organization, pwede. In another school, mag-member ka ng leftist organization, tanggal ka. Pero ang sinasabi ng Supreme Court dito, the standard should be followed meticulously. It cannot be utilized to discriminate against students who exercise their constitutional rights to peaceable assembly and free speech. You see, sinasabi na alam ng Supreme Court, no, na mayroong mandate ng military, alam ng Supreme Court na mayroong mandate ang may academic freedom ng organizational academic freedom ang universities, pero sinasabi pa rin niya na may constitutional right to peaceable assembly and free speech. Ang problema, nahuhulog tayo dun sa tinatawag natin argument of the beard, wherein tinitake advantage din ng leftist organizations itong constitutional rights in order to slowly pinipitikan na dun sa other side, which is clearly unconstitutional. That is why we need also, aside from a legal analysis, we need a philosophical basis in order to protect both rights. No? Na yung academic freedom at the same time to prevent our students to become victims. Kasi especially kung may anak ka, natatakot ka rin. Baka mamaya mawalan ka na. Pagkat mo palaki, biglang di-disappear. NPA ako. Of course, some parents are proud of that as NPA din sila. But if you're not an NPA, hindi ka proud. And most of them die. Of course, I will not show. Pero minsan sa Facebook lang, di ba, makikita mo na yung mga pictures ng mga natatamaan na sa bata. Okay? So, that ends my presentation. Thank you very much.
All right. Student activism.
Stop sharing. Ay, nakahinto na ba ako mag-share? Kanina.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Ay, sorry. Okay.
Okay, at this juncture, if anyone would like to share their insights or comments on yes, Sir Rochi, Dr. Rochi, would like to share your thoughts.
Hello po, Sir Bobby.
Yeah.
Dalawa yung concern ko. One is curiosity. The other one is suggestion you may or you may not take. The first one, meron kang info based on this research of yours somehow in University of Santo Tomas for the past recent years or what? Meron ka bang na students natin na exactly yung kinatatakutan ng study mo ay naganap sa kanila? Yan.
Meron tayo, in fact, doon sa video, isa taga UST doon. Pero, of course, I need to validate that first. Pero, syempre, I cannot focus too much, no? Kasi philosophical study to eh. I cannot focus too much on my recruit. Kasi mangyayari, magiging propaganda study itong study ko, no? If for example, parang magiging life, parang alam na yung objective of the study is to stop recruitment of students. So ayoko mahulog sa ganun at this point in time. Ang ginagawa ko lang kasi, nililinaw ko muna using my study yung demarcation line nung academic freedom at saka yung military mandate. Kasi pwedeng umapaw yung military or pwedeng umapaw din yung academic freedom to the point na mawalan tayo ng future students. So, yun yung iniisip ko. Yung nakaraan kasi, wala na eh. nawala na sa ating student, nasa bundok na. Yung taga-UST, hindi pa na-record siya na missing or missing pala siya, pero hindi pa siya na-record na natamaan. So most probably, ang huling info nga sa kanya, nasa Samar. Pero inatake yung Samar kamakailan. Hindi ko alam kung casualty siya doon.
Yeah. Sige, thank you, Sir Bobby. Just out of curiosity, no. Second, as regards those, kasi hindi mo maiiwasan, you started with contextualization nung thesis statement mo that there are indeed fell, no, and until now they are missing. So ang sa akin naman is if you can also consider the possibility of the otherwise, like the phenomenon, the controversies of red tagging, para bang ang papakita mo dito, I would suggest, is to show also the possibility of failure of intelligence on the part of the government. Kasi parang at least somehow you will show both sides, parang gano'n, no? So veracity of those. The other one is a limitation of your work. And doing so, you might also provide credence dun sa study mo. Although you are mentioning that you are only touching at that very thin line that demarcates freedom of expression, freedom, academic freedom versus that of yan na nga, no, yung illicit groups, no, of terrorism. Yun. Kasi I'm coming from yung recently lang anti-terrorism law, some portions you mentioned kanina, no, na sinasabing unconstitutional. Yun lang. So my second statement in short is maybe you can also see that there might be a failure on the part of the government, no, as regards those data that you have presented at the beginning. Yun lang, sir. Thank you.
Mention ko lang, no, kasi kanina umaga, kausap ko si Lieutenant Colonel Diego Pilar. Siya yung senior officer ng CMO, or Civilian Military Operations ng Philippine Air Force. So nagkikwentuhan kami kanina umaga at binanggit niya nga itong pagpunta nila dito sa Manuel and Berga University kasi may inuunahan silang recruitment. So gumawa silang seminar na pangalan National Security Concern Awareness. And then afterwards may lumabas sa newspaper. Ito yung lumabas sa newspaper. Ito yung statement naman ng Anak Bayan Quezon dun sa ginawa ng military dun sa school. Ang sabi ng Anak Bayan Quezon, ito nasa newspaper ito, pero ayoko nang banggitin. Condemns in the possible terms the attacks by the Southern Luzon Command, the AFP, against the youth and their presence in Manuel and Berga University. Ang gumawa nito talaga sila, yung Lieutenant Colonel na kausap ko. Ito yung sinasabi nila. During the activity, the AFP actively red tagged youth and progressive organizations, telling old lies such as never-ending communist front story. So, nakita niya, no, laging yun nga ang danger, no, kapag ang military ginamit niya yung mandate niya, pero let us say ito, kung maniniwala ako sa sa kwento ni Sir Pilar, sinasabi niya na nag-organize sila ng seminar, of course with the agreement of the university, at nag-conduct sila ng seminar, National Security Concern Awareness. Kasi nga may pumasok na intel na malakas ang recruitment nun. Yun ang nakakatakot na. That is only one example, no? Na of course yung military kasi nakaamoy ng ng recruitment. So syempre yung thinking niya nandoon sa provision niya, di ba? Na constitutional provision niya na kailangan solving ko to, kundi hindi ko ginagawa ang trabaho ko. Kaya nga tinayo yung CMO. Yung CMO kasi is a major what we call this administrative aspect of the military, which is the civilian military operation. Inaano nila yan, gumagawa sila ng acts na binibuild nila yung military. Ang problema kasi, yung intel kasi, hindi na jajaryo yan. So, ang problema, pagdating ng intel sa kanila, hindi yan nakuha sa dyaryo, nakuha yan sa intel officers or sa intel nila on the ground. Then they will act on it. Diba? Yun ang problema, Rochi. So, pag nag-act sila doon, ayan na, labas na sa dyaryo yan. Na nagbe-brainwash ng military, ano. So, yun ang problema, no? Kasi parang nagtutulakan niyang universities, no? Pero at this time naman, pumayag naman ng Manuel and Berger University. Pero parang nagtutulakan, no? Pati yung mga students na, military din lang kayo. Pero sabihin ng military, trabaho namin yan. Papasok kami din sa kumbaga makikialam kami. Ang problema, Rochi, tama ka, failure of intelligence. Kasi pag sumabit ang intel pala dyan, tapos nag-act ang military, patay. Di ba? Kumbaga, wrong yung military on that.
Sir Bob, yeah. Wala naman ako actually dun sa yung mga intelligence, yan. Talagang merong legitimate. Ang suggestion ko is on those cases, limbawa, na meron talagang failure. I'm not saying lahat yun, definitely, ay legit. I'm not saying also na lahat yun ay failure of intelligence. Siguro, to tone down on the paper will simply be, there could be a possibility of failure of intelligence, which will be also part of limitation of your study. At the same time, you are also providing the other side of the coin. Parang ganun ba? Of course, you may or you may not, of course.
Kapag hindi magandang pamamalakad ng government.
Yan, precisely. Precisely, kasi ang daming factors like ang ganda nung sayo kasi this is on a intellectual level, pero kung tatanungin mo on the grounds, the reason why also many of them are joining the other camps is economic in nature. Yung sayo maganda kasi academic, no, ideology dun sa level na yun, kaya maganda ito. Just the same, I would like you also kung to say there the other side of the coin, no, na there could be a failure of
intelligence. Kasi baka maging propaganda yung paper ko. Thank you, Rochi. Kasi pag puro sa side lang ng military, baka maging propaganda. Or pag naging puro sa side naman ng academic freedom, baka maging propaganda rin.
Exactly. Yung sinasabi mong yan ang very wordings nalalabas, I suggest, dun sa paper mo. Yun lang. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Doc Rochi, for those comments. Is there still someone who'd like to share their thoughts? Just raise your hand. Right? No one? Yes, Dr. Pao, like to say something?
Hello, salamat, Alvid. Hello, good evening, Doc Bob. You mentioned earlier that there are philosophical responses to the problem that you raised. I'm just wondering if you can mention maybe one or two of these responses. I don't know if these are responses that ultimately will provide solutions. I'm not sure. I mean, personally, I don't think the answer is in philosophy. Given the fact also that there's no room for philosophy in Philippine politics, or at least they don't regard philosophers as, you know, as part of the conversation. Maybe as a matter of fact, they find as part of the problem, at least on the military side, no? Philosophy yan, nagtuturo yan ng kung ano-anong mga ideolohiya, di ba? So what are the philosophical responses? Maybe one or two. I'm just curious. No? And then I call this the other thing that I have in mind is there, kasi one of my problems is that with this situation, I think a demarcation or parang there seems to be this yung parang I don't know if I could call it unnecessary bifurcation, no? Parang may binary opposition between, on the one hand, the terrorist group or NPA in particular, and on the other hand, the military. Na parang ang choices na lang natin is to side with the military or to side with the NPA. I'm wondering if there is parang a third option. In a way, siguro ito rin yung sinasabi ni Rochi kanina na maybe yeah, may extremism on the one hand, but on the other hand, there's also the tendency of the government armed with the law, in particular the anti-terrorism law. There are only two provisions in the law that they found unconstitutional. All the other provisions, and specifically the provision that's for a lot of us, at least for me, maybe many others, think that still unconstitutional is yung warrantless arrest. And that remain intact. Di nila tinanggal yun. So my worry is that still that could be used as a mechanism to and parang a license, no, to continue continue this culture of red tagging and so on. I'm not saying na, in other words, I'm also in a quandary, you know? Pero ano ba yung sasabihin ko, yung ultimately, is there a position, is there a third option or a fourth or the fifth option where we could ultimately talk about, kasi parang wala na, hindi, is it possible to go back to the root cause of all this and solve it from that, you know? What happened to peace talks, for example? What happened to dialogue? Kasi parang inabandon na yun na option. So anyway, yun lang yung mga thoughts na nasa akin at this point. Thank you.
Tingin ko, Pao, no, it's, yun nga masakit eh. Like for example na kanina, no, when I posted my this seminar, yung mga responses sa akin ng friends ko in the military side, laging yan, sige, way to go, Bobby. Kasi siyempre ang dating kaagad eh parang magpo-propaganda ako on the side of the military. Pero it's not always the case kasi siyempre ang study ko nga eh inaalam ko nga kung kailan sila pwede mag-cross ng academic freedom or in what way naman pwedeng mag-overflow ang ang academic freedom. Kasi tayo, philosophers, nakikitaan natin ng philosophical side ito. Like for example, no, the interpretation of the Constitution. May mga ways by which we interpret the Constitution. Pwedeng naturalistic, pwedeng positivistic, or through a moral reading of the Constitution, katulad na sinasabi ni Workin, which he calls the interpretive way to interpret the Constitution. Eh baka naman pag dinaan natin sa ganung klase statutory construction ng Constitution, baka mas luminaw yung demarcation line. Now ang problem kasi itong yung misnomer ng yung use of language, no? Kasi katulad ngayon, yung mga dinideclare na terrorist ang ibang organization. Tapos kapag nahanap ka na tumutulong ka dito sa mga organizations na to, in ways na, let us say, nag-support ka financially, di ba, yun ang laman ng anti-terrorism law, eh mako-consider ka na rin as a part of the organization. Kasi ginugutom na nila yung org, no? Ginugutom na nila. And the Supreme Court, when it was given to the Supreme Court, there are only two aspects that were declared unconstitutional. Number one, yung interpretation ng cause serious harm. Kasi pag sinabi mo na nagko-cause ka ng serious harm, ano yung serious harm? Mahirap i-interpret yun kasi anybody, including murderers or nambubugbog lang ng tao, serious harm na yon, eh pwede ka na matawag na terrorist. So sinabi ng Supreme Court, masyado broad na yun. Ang problema niya, babaguhin lang nila ng konti yan, so hindi na unconstitutional yan. And the second one is to declare somebody as a terrorist upon the request of other countries. So kunyari, dineclare sa United States na terrorist ang isang organization, baka sundin ka agad natin on the basis of that. So sabi ng Supreme Court, hindi daw pwede yun. So babaguhin lang nila yan, ano? And then suddenly, magulat tayo na revise na nila yan. Constitutional na kaagad ang anti-terrorism law. Pero as philosophers, meron tayong mga nakikita na possible na hindi nakikita ng military or hindi rin nakikita ng common na tao. Like for example, halatang-halata na yung anti-terrorism law is to solve this problem, no? Nag-benchmark tayo ng security laws ng Amerika against terrorism. Pero ang target talaga natin is the communist movement. Pero what happens now kung matalo na ang communist movement? So ano nang gamit nitong anti-terrorism law? So kunyari philosopher ka, lalampas ka dun sa ganung framework. So pag lumabas ka sa ganung framework, makikita mo na yung dangers ng law. Diba? Kasi ngayon, pwede siguro may konting use siya sa pag-stop ng internal rebellion. Kasi nga may deadline. Diba si Duterte, binigyan niya ng deadline ng military to end the rebellion upon the end of his term. I don't know if kung magagawa yan, pero the military is saying na optimistic sila, no, with that mandate. Eh, yun nga yung duality, no, na alam naman natin as philosophers hindi naman lagi nag-e-exist, no. Nandiyan yan sa sa Constitution. So legally speaking, may duality talaga. So anong nangyayari? Parang any kind of deviation from the constitutional provision, mapupunta ka na kagad dun sa other side of the duality. Eh, lahat ng oppression all throughout history, Paulo, emanated from dualities. Makikita mo, di ba? We're the good guys, you're the bad guys, or we're the noble ones, you are the unnoble ones. Laging may demarcation. Demarcate ka muna, you belong to this and I belong to this. Tapos dun ka na ma-oppress. Eh, hindi rin nakikita na naman ng ano. So I think, actually, the solution to these problems is philosophy para sa akin. Para sa akin lang, no? So I will try to solve this philosophically. And I don't know if everybody would listen. In other words, nagbibigay lang naman ako on what I can contribute, on the facts that I know, plus on the philosophical background that I have. Attempt lang naman, kasi pwedeng hindi naman basahin ng paper ko, pwedeng hindi naman sundin. So at the end of the day, ganun din. At least naka-raise lang ng awareness, or baka magkaroon ng leader na nagbabasa ng philosophy. E di swerte tayo, kasi nakapagsulat tayo ng clarification.
All right. Thank you Bob, for your response, for your comments. Is there anyone from the group would like to share your thoughts and questions to Dr. Bob? All right. Time check. It's 8:39 in our watch. Perhaps there's no more questions from our group. So at this juncture, we thank you. Thank you for attending the work in progress this semester. And we are truly grateful to all those who have presented their work thesis. Teka, mayroon daw pong, sige po, ano ba ito? May pa-plug po si Doc Rochi. All right. Would you like to say something, Doc?
Wala
Rochi?
naman,
Yeah.
Sir Alvin, just the same. Alam naman ng mga kasamahan natin. Reminder lang po, yung 9th episode ng Boboto Ako 2022 sa 18th sa Sabado, pag free po kayo, 8 p.m. Yan. Ano siya sa Facebook, maano din siya sa YouTube. Magpo-post po ulit kami po.
Sa grad school, Doc, is sa Messenger.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ay, wala akong access doon, Alvin, sorry. Pasa ko na lang kayo. Makisuyo ako sa iyo, baka lang interesado.
Sige po.
Sige ito ng department. Opo. Thank you.
Sige po.
Thank you.
Okay. Wala pong ano man. Okay. And we this also would like to thank Doc Jovi, Doc Pao, Sir Anton, Sir Aldrin. And but Sir Belgian is not around because brownout ata sa kanila, for making this work in progress possible and successful. And most importantly, for those who have imparted their comments, suggestions, recommendations from our colleagues, friends, and fellow teachers to improve and enhance our work. And as Chuang Tzu once said, of all things that has been said and done, what is more important is left unsaid. Happy holidays to everyone. Merry Christmas. Maraming salamat. You may leave now the session.
Thank you very much.
Maraming salamat.